Hi, hello, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Anna Spiesens and I will be moderating today's webinar with Brit and Paula from the European Marine Board. This webinar is organized as part of the ECO Program's Training and Mentoring Task Team. And for those recently becoming familiar, the ECOP Network is a program endorsed by the UN Ocean Decades in 2021. And our mission is to strengthen perspectives and new generations of ocean professionals. Throughout this webinar, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. If you have any questions for Paula and Britt, you can also put them in the Q&A chat box, or if that doesn't work, you can put it in the chat. And yeah, we'll wait a few more seconds for people to join the webinar. In the meantime, we will launch a quick poll to get to know who's in this webinar today with us. So now you should see a screen pop up with a question: where are you joining us from? West Africa, East Africa, North America, South America, Central America, Europe, Oceania, Asia, Middle East, or other? A second question, are you an ECOP? And a third question, what is your field of work? With a few answers, options from policy, industry, research, government exploration, and other. So today's episode is Engaging Science, Policy and Art in the Ocean Decades with Paula Kellett and Britt Alexander, both from the European Marine Board. And the European Marine Board is a think tank working between marine science and policy. And Paula is Deputy Executive Director and Science Officer at the European Marine Board since 2016. And she has a background in naval architecture and marine engineering, and she has worked in academia, in industry, and now she supports science and organizational activities of EMB, but also the EMB ECOP Network and the Ambassador Program. And Britt is a science officer at the European Marine Board since 2019 with a background in marine biology and biotechnology. And before joining EMB, Britt worked in academia and for the open access publisher Frontiers. Now she supports the science activities of EMB and leads the Embracing the Ocean Artists in Residence program. And in a few minutes, they will start their interesting presentation. And for those who just joined, sorry for repeating. Can somebody maybe try and send a message in the chat just to make sure that it's working? Yes. Okay. Thank you, Sophia. Thank you for testing. Hi, Marta from Latvia. Thank you so much for introducing yourself. There's people from Switzerland, from Morocco, the Netherlands, maybe not so far away from the European Marine Board's office. I will now end the poll and share the results. So we have we have somebody from West Africa with us today, people from Europe, somebody from Oceania, two from Asia, and somebody from somewhere else, other. A bit more than half people say they are an ECOP, but we also have some people who are not ECOPs, so early career ocean professionals. And then there's people from policy backgrounds, research, marine biology, oceanography, biochemistry, but also government and others. So thank you so much, everyone, for answering these poll questions. It's amazing to get to know who's in the webinar. And then I will give the floor to Paula and Britt.
Thank you so much, Anna, and great to be here. We're really happy to have this opportunity to speak to you guys, and especially because it's such a spread of people from different places. Thanks for joining from whatever time zone it is. For us, it's quite a reasonable time in the morning, but I think for other people, it might be a less convenient hour. So we really appreciate that. So I'm going to speak first, and I'm going to talk more about the science and policy aspects of what EMB does, especially linked to the work of the Ocean Decade. And then I'm going to hand over to my colleague Britt afterwards, so she can talk more about our Artist in Residence program and the great work that's already been done over the several years that's been running. So next slide, please. And I think we're going to go straight into a poll before any spoilers, because yeah, we're kind of unique like that. We want to know if you know us, and then afterwards we'll tell you if you don't. So it's not really a problem. So have you ever heard of the European Marine Board? Yes or no? And I don't know isn't an answer, I guess. And I guess we'll give you a little bit of time to just think about that, and then I'll tell you all about the European Marine Board anyway.
Maybe some people will do a quick Google if they're answering no.
We don't mind. That's okay. I don't know how the results are already looking, Anna.
It is the majority is saying yes, but I'll share the results and then
Woo!
we can all see them.
This is great news. Wow, look at that. Okay, so at least we know who we're targeting this presentation to. But if you haven't heard about us, of course, that's not an issue. And we're going to tell you a bit more about what we do in the coming slides. So thanks for that. So next slide, please. So first of all, who are we? Well, as Anna introduced, we're a think tank. We sit between the marine science and the marine policy fields. And our main aim is to provide advice, recommendations, foresight, research needs, policy needs to the policy, mostly in Europe. But a lot of the work we do is also very relevant internationally. We do that in a variety of ways, and you'll see that coming back in the presentation later. But that includes publications that we, again, target at European policymakers, but also European national organizations. Also events that we organize in different formats, online, in person, and just general communications about what's going on in the European marine science landscape. We'll go straight to the next slide, please, so you can actually see who it is that we are. So we're a membership organization of marine institutes, of research funding agencies, and national networks of universities, specifically those with a focus on marine and maritime topics. So you see we cover 37 members from 19 European countries. We always say we represent more than 10,000 scientists and technicians, but I suspect that's actually gone up recently because we had some new members a couple of years ago. So I think we might need to recount that. And we are supported, well, the organization is supported by a secretariat, which you should see on the right-hand side there. So we're a core team of 6, but we do sometimes take on interns, and we have our chair as well that works with us. So a small but happy team here in Belgium, in Ostend, hosted by the Flemish Marine Institute, and we're very happy about that. So we will go straight to the next slide, I think. So talk about specifically EMB and the Ocean Decade. So our uh, a link to the Ocean Decade actually started sometime before it kicked off. So we every 2 years we host an EMB forum, which is a one-day event where we host it always in Brussels, and we specifically aim to bring together marine science and policy communities to talk about a very important topic, to try and bring ideas together and really look for a way forward on this topic. And in 2017, we had one that was very focused on the SDGs and trying to understand what the role of science was specifically enabling kind of achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. And at that event, we had Vladimir Ryabinin, the former IOC Executive Secretary, speaking, and he introduced this idea of a kind of an ocean decade, a decade of celebrating the ocean and the science related to it. Very supportive, obviously, of such an endeavor, which it did seem like a very big undertaking even then. And then in 2021, so in December 2021, in still the midst of some COVID restrictions, so it was not the most, easy event to organize, but we had another forum, which then specifically focused on the ocean decade. So what could we in Europe as marine science community do to enable the achievement of the decade and its challenges? And we were very proud at that event to be listed as the first Ocean Decade implementing partner globally. So we like to share that fact. And what we undertook to do was to support the Ocean Decade in providing foresight. So that's very much linked to our core activities in providing recommendations for research needs, for policy needs, observation needs, where marine science needs to go, what we need to do next to really be addressing the challenges of the Ocean Decade. Also coordination, so we undertook to work together with our other implementing partners in Europe, the Decade Coordinating Centres and so on, and trying to bring our work together wherever possible to make sure we really working towards a common goal. And communication. So we do that in a variety of ways. You'll see there an Ocean Decade newsletter that summarizes the work that's going on in Europe for the Ocean Decade, and that comes out 3 times a year. We also heavily use social media and our website to highlight what's going on, and also organize events related to the Ocean Decade. So a couple of years ago, we had a multi-day conference, Eurocean, which was very much focused on achieving the Ocean Decade. As I said, we had our forum a couple of years ago, and we've also done some smaller events to support this ongoing activity. So we've undertaken to dedicate half a person per year towards the Ocean Decade for the duration of the decade. So quite a lot of work between us to kind of make sure we keep focusing on this. So if we can go to the next slide.
I think we also have a poll to see if people have worked with the Ocean Decade.
You did. Thanks for reminding me.
Oh, no worries.
And I think this is actually very relevant because it's something we also had to think about at the beginning. So the Ocean Decade is so broad and it really covers quite a lot of things, but it took us some thinking to see, okay, where is our place in here and what are we doing to support it in a concrete manner? So it was definitely a very important activity for us to do that thought process. So the question is, of course, does your work directly link to one of the Ocean Decade challenges? Yes or no?
Yeah, and as a reminder, if anyone has any questions about this, please feel free to send them in the chat, in the Q&A chat box.
I don't know how the results are already looking.
We'll share them, share results.
Okay, so that's quite interesting. I think as the majority say your work does not directly link, and absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I'm hoping that my next slide will maybe you inspire to just have another look. So thank you for that. So here is an overview of some of the publications that EMB has published over the recent years. So these have definitely all come out since the Ocean Decade has been under operation. And you can see it covers an absolutely vast variety of different topics. So we've got science communication, renewable energy, ocean oxygen, habitat mapping, blue carbon, we've got coastal resilience, and our very new document on marine carbon dioxide removal. And in every single one of those documents, there is a box front and center at the beginning of the document saying, this is how this document directly relates to the Ocean Decade. So what we try and do there is highlight where the recommendations that we are making, where the state-of-the-art oversight overviews that we are making, where the discussions that we're raising, how those directly help us in thinking about the science that we need to achieve the ocean we want. And as I say, it covers a completely varied amount of topics. Each one will probably relate to a different challenge of the Ocean Decade, a different aspect, but they all relate to the Ocean Decade. So I imagine that many of you, even though perhaps it's not so clear, perhaps it's not the core aim of your activity, maybe there is still a small link. Maybe in some way you are still providing input to the Ocean Decade, perhaps without even knowing it. So I guess that's good news for all of us. So that's, kind of an overview of the policy in a very short nutshell, but the policy work we do related to the Ocean Decade. If we can go to the next slide now, I'll just talk about a bit the ECOP activities that we do, as that's also a very important aspect of our work. So next slide, please. Thanks. So first of all, our EMB ECOP network. I think we're younger than the Ocean Decade ECOP program. We set together something like 2022. And we wanted to bring the ECOPs, especially at EMB member organizations, together. As you see, we're an organization spread across the whole of Europe with a wide variety of different organizations. And there are many ECOPs at all of those organizations, but it's not maybe so clear as to how to connect. So we really wanted to make that platform available. So between us, our ambassadors and the Secretariat, and I'll introduce the ambassador program in a minute, we established this network and it became a formal part of the Marine Board in October 2024 when the board approved the idea to officially support this. So I think that was also a very strong message from, marine institutes across Europe that this was really an important thing to support. We provide, of course, an opportunity to network and meet peers across Europe, but we're also very keen that ECOPs gain a voice at EMB levels. So they gain a voice in this marine science and policy interface. Sometimes that's via the ambassadors. So the ambassadors can bring the voice of the ECOPs to, for example, our board meetings, to our activities, to our events, where they're often invited as speakers. But they can also interact on, for example, proposing activities that we will engage in later, in being nominated as working group members to support writing our documents, and so on. So we're really very keen that the ECOP voice becomes a strong voice within EMB. The Ocean Decade shows that, a lot can change in 10 years, and the people who are just studying at the beginning of the Ocean Decade will be, core leaders in ocean science by the end of the decade. So I think it's very important to start that process and engage those voices. We have a monthly ECOP Wednesday webinar series. So on the first Wednesday of every month, we have a webinar that, they're very focused on the marine science policy aspect. So that's a little niche. They've covered a wide variety of different topics, but we like to, have a range of speakers, both ECOPs, but also more experienced researchers, policymakers, and so on, to come and speak on different topics. So if that's something you're interested, then we definitely look forward to welcoming you to the next edition. And we also had an EMB ECOP Network forum that we held in October 2023 and brought together some of those ECOPs to more actively network, discuss marine science policy, and learn a bit more about what we do. And then last summer at the UN Ocean Conference, there was the launch of the Coalition of Emerging Ocean Leaders. That's a global initiative, and it brought together ECOP networks, including ours. So we're very proud to also have that international link, and we look forward to continuing that engagement. And then if you can go to the next slide, I'll just talk briefly about our ambassadors. So our ambassador program is something we set up to even more actively bring this sort of young voice into EMB. Our board is represented, our members are represented in the board by quite experienced researchers, and perhaps that younger voice does not always come through so easily. So our ambassadors, we take on 2 either PhDs or postdocs every year. They serve a 2-year term, so there's an overlap every year. We have 4 in total, and they have a small stipend plus some budget for travel and dissemination and activities to support us in our communication activities, to promote EMB and marine science to a wider audience, including their own networks, and bring a different perspective to our activities. You know, they often have new ideas about how we can do communications, how we can reach out, and what would be interesting. And we've really enjoyed having them on board. And yeah, for me, it's a great program because I get to run it. So I'm coming to the end of my section. I think we have one more slide and there's a poll. So maybe do the poll first. Thank you. So we wanted to know, have you actively reached out to policymakers during your work? And if yes, in what way that might have been? And again, this is not a test. If you haven't, that's absolutely not a problem. But on the next slide, I will just give some tips from our side about if that's something you're interested in, how that could go about. So the options are yes verbally, yes in writing, yes via a policy-facing document, no or not sure.
And I think here it's quite interesting if you're answering no, but you actually would have wanted to reach out. Maybe this is a great time to ask for advice to Paula and Brit, tell them about your barriers, and maybe they can help you.
Yeah, absolutely. I suspect many people have similar barriers. Some of our tips may help, but we're always ready to answer questions and provide guidance where we can. And you know, it's a space where everyone keeps learning, so we're happy to share. So quite a mix, but there's a reasonable amount of people who actually have, which I think is really encouraging already. As I say, it can be quite a daunting area to engage in. So if you've had that opportunity already, I think that's really promising. Good job. Thank you. Okay, so on this slide, this is just a few tips that we have for if you would want to engage, then these are some ways that could work. So something that we, of course, do is develop and share scientific evidence to support decision and policy making. So this can also be in the form of different publications, for example. But I think what's important in that context is then to make sure the research and the policy recommendations are in an accessible format, and that the policy relevance of the research that you are doing, should you want it to be taken up in a policy context, that relevance is really highlighted. Yeah, poor policymakers also don't have infinite time to go trawling through all the papers that are now published to find the bit of information that they were looking for. So it's really helpful to kind of highlight that specifically, make those clear, explicit links, and make the formats where possible really accessible, easy to read, easy to digest, and easy to know what the actions needed are. The more explicit, the better, really. You can also engage in initiatives. So, for example, as you're doing now, engaging with activities for the Ocean Decade, engaging with work on the SDGs, engaging in the various COP activities that go on, really relevant. And that's where I think science and policy really clearly do come together. You could also attend events, even if not to present your own work, to hear more about what's happening in the landscape and kind of get a wider context of where your work fits in with what's happening in the world. If you have an opportunity, engaging in advisory bodies and groups as a national expert representative. This has traditionally been quite difficult for ECOPs. But for example, the other day we had an ECOP webinar with people from the UN, from Tualos, who are working on the World Ocean Assessment, and they're very specifically trying to engage ECOPs in their processes now. So I think more and more there is recognition that this is an important voice to bring in. Where this possibility, engaging in funded research is something that, then someone has had a reason to pay that money to do that research. They'll be very interested in the results that come out and how they can be used. In Europe, for example, you have the opportunity to engage in public consultations. So where the European Commission is looking to develop policy, update policy, look for where they should be going in direction. They launch public consultations, and anyone can provide their thoughts, their input. So that's a really interesting opportunity as well. And finally, I mean, policymakers are just people, right? So trying to get to know people, if you were at an event or, linking on social media, I think these are great ways to both make those relevant links and also see what's important for other people and where those links could be made. So that was my part. I'm now going to hand over to my colleague Britt, who's going to talk about our Artist in Residence program and all the great stuff in there. But if there's any questions specific on my part first, then I'd be very happy to take those.
Yeah, Paula, I saw that we do have a question coming in from Malou Estier. I am curious about the Coalition for Emerging Ocean Leaders. What is it and how do you engage with it?
So thank you for the question. I can actually provide you once I stop talking, because I can't talk and type at the same time, but I'll provide you their LinkedIn page because they've set up a network there. I wasn't so directly involved with the setup. It was one of our former ambassadors who was kind of engaged in that activity. But the idea is to bring all of the different ECOP networks that are happening globally, because there are many and each has their own purpose, but to bring them together to really have some more common goals. So for example, what they did at the UN Ocean Conference was have a series of events specifically highlighting why it's important to engage ECOPs in things like ocean governance, and to really bring a strong message, not just from one ECOP network, but from ECOP networks globally. And I think that's the core idea. It's to bring that global strong voice to these matters and make sure that it can't be ignored. In terms of how to engage, as far as I know, you reach out and tell them you're interested. I don't think there's much exclusion going on. I think they're very keen to have people who are interested. And I will, after I've stopped talking, I'll put the link in the chat here.
Okay, those are all questions for now, but if any other questions pop up, please still put them in the chat box and I'm sure they will give you a good answer.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so good morning, everybody. My name is Britt Alexander. It's nice to be here with you this morning. So we're going to move on to the second part of the talk today, where I will be talking about the Embracing the Ocean program, which is the Artist in Residence program of the European Marine Board. So we're going to start with a poll, actually, which I think Paula is going to read out the question for you. There we go, and the answers once they come in.
Britt's only has got one screen, so she can't see all of these things. So the question is, what do you think is the most important impact that ocean art science collaborations can achieve? So the options are increased public awareness of issues facing the ocean, increased ocean literacy, improved engagement with policymakers, new knowledge and scientific insights, none of the above, or not sure.
Okay, let us know how the results are looking as well. We'll give you a couple of minutes to think about your answers.
Have we got some good answers already?
Okay. Oh, I can actually see. So I can comment on these, Paula. So, can everybody see these answers? Or is it just us? Anyway, so the first number one impact that you all thought was increased public awareness of issues facing the ocean. Number two, increased ocean literacy. Let's see, number three, new knowledge and scientific insights. And then fourth is improved engagement with policymakers. Yeah, so yeah, that's really interesting. I wanted to sort of gauge what you all thought of that before we start. And then we'll go into these in more detail as we go through the talk. So a bit of an overview about the program. So it's a contribution of the European Marine Board to the Ocean Decade. We started the program in 2021. And the main aim was to inspire ocean engagement, specifically linking to the Ocean Decade Challenge 10 to restore society's relationship with the ocean. So we offer grants every year. It's 10,000 euros for each team of artists and scientists, and we select two teams each year. And it's open to artists and scientists globally. So because it's linked to the Ocean Decade, it's not restricted to Europe. Although we do usually get slightly more applications from within Europe. And the artists and scientists have to work together to co-create a new piece of work. And I lead the selection committee. And we have a team of 6 people on the committee for various different art and science and communication backgrounds. And we have the difficult task to choose only 2 projects from it's been around 200 applications every year, actually. So I'll go a bit more into the objectives of the program. So the first objective, and we really look for these when we're scoring the applications, how strongly they meet these objectives. So the first is to raise societal awareness of the ocean and embrace connection to the ocean. So that also aligns with the top impact category that you all chose from the poll. So I think that this is if we think about art science collaborations, this is usually the first thing that people think of in terms of their value. And the second objective is to inspire positive behavior towards sustainability. So that's also linked to increasing ocean literacy. And the third objective is to contribute new insights and perspectives to science. So we'll focus a bit more on this today as we go through the presentation, because I think that this aspect is sometimes a bit more arbitrary to understand how exactly, as scientists, if you're working with artists, how can this process feed back to your work as a scientist, either through the art as a research method, or it can just be that working with the artist brings you new perspectives into the way that you're doing your science and approaching your research questions. So I think it's also interesting to really think about what does co-creation mean. And we've seen a huge diversity in our own projects that we've selected over the years in terms of their approach to co-creation. So there is no sort of one way to do it. It's something that can be unique to each project and each team that are collaborating with each other. But in general, so co-creation is the process of creating something new together while exchanging and reshaping ideas. The artists and scientists are considered equal, and each benefits and learns from the process. And the aim of co-creation is to go beyond making complex scientific topics more accessible to the public, and aiming to help scientists gain new insights and perspectives into their work, potentially contributing to the scientific process. So we really look for this strong co-creation aspect of the projects, as well as the strong public outreach aspects, either to the public or sometimes also a target audience can be policymakers. So I'm going to go into a bit more detail on three examples, three selected projects that we've had over the years. And these three projects were the strongest projects that we had in terms of this reciprocal influence between the art and the science and the co-design, which is quite difficult to find these projects actually in the pool of 200 applications that we get every year. So that's why I really wanted to highlight these success stories. So the first is a project that we had in 2023 to 2024. It's called Deep Time. It was two artists, Rhoda and Mikael from Copenhagen, and they collaborated with Professor Juliana Panieri from the Arctic University of Norway. They developed glass cores from deep sea sediments, looking to connect audiences in their exhibitions to life in extreme environments, and to take a deep time and geological perspective to change the way that we're thinking about the future. And it also had a really strong aspect of feedback to the scientific work of Juliana, where she was looking at this glass blowing as a scientific method to look at the thermal stability of the minerals in the glass cores. So I think that I'm going to show a short documentary that they developed during their residency. And the reason why I want to show this is because I think by really listening to the artists and the scientists, you will get a really strong feeling for how their collaboration went and how it developed and the benefits of it. So I will start the video now. Hopefully you can hear it. If you can't, let me know.
Yeah, we can hear.
Working with time as a concept, it becomes very apparent that time needs a historical gaze to be perceived as the time we know it now, as past, present and future. It's very difficult talking about a Thursday a million years ago. That's an abstract format, and that's really interesting when it then comes to deep time. The impact that we are doing now happens so fast, but then also what are we a part of actually?
And how can looking at and reconnecting with deep time, can that help guide us into maybe different directions into the future? Can it maybe excite us? Can it maybe calm us? Can it maybe scare us? What can we learn from it? Last summer, we were invited by an art historian called Mikkel Kjær. He was invited onto a Norwegian scientific cruise where he wanted to basically observe artists and scientists working together to explore what kind of knowledge and experience can that intersection create.
Historically, artists have been on these types of cruises quite a long time with abilities to draw plants or draw animals. But this is in some ways a new way to work together because we're exploring as they're exploring as well. So we are not translating what they find into an aesthetic or visual representation, but are trying to conduct our own aesthetic research with them as well.
Oh, there's a bunch of good stuff here.
Yeah, I still remember when we met very clearly because it was these two artists invited to join a scientific expedition. I have been at sea many times and I know what does it mean to be on a boat. And this boat particularly, because this is a big boat. There are a lot of decks, there are a lot of corridors, a lot of cabins and a lot of instruments and yeah, you get lost very easily. They were curious about what we were doing, so what the scientists were doing. And I was very curious to know what they were doing. And we met there. I think it was our curiosity and also the will to really discover something else. For example, I was showing them the plankton net. You can take samples of organisms from the water, and then I show them the instrument that I generally use, which is a gravity corer, which is a long cylinder of steel, and we use it to bring up the sediment from the seafloor. I'm interested in going back in time and see what has happened 10,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago, and so on, and they were interested to know how these sediments can tell me the history of our ocean.
We were lucky enough to get 217 centimeters worth of sediment back up, which Juliana says dates back to 12,000 years. We were then able to divide that into 11 packages, which corresponded to different geological time. We found it so interesting that we could have come in contact with 12,000 years ago, the organic material, the life, the death, the decaying. Again, we still didn't know what we would do with it, but we packed it up and brought it back to Denmark. And then we had an exhibition coming up at a glass museum where it was also an open-ended research with the glass blowers. So one of the days we just told the glass blower, Chris, we said, well, we have this 12,000-year-old sediment. Maybe we'll dry it up, make it into some powder. Can you put it in the glass and see what happens?
What we are doing now here, we are basically trapping in the glass geological processes that is invisible to our eyes. This is something that occurs inside the magma chambers. So you are basically freezing in time geological processes which is impossible to see.
You're basically God, right?
Yes, you are. You have the planet in your hand.
We learned from the scientists that a lot of the sediment falling down is from the water column, is organic material, also comprised of silicate. All of the algae or the shells, crustaceans, their shells are silicate, and silicate is the main component of glass. So is there a connection between the living species and a rock formation like glass, and are we connected as such as living to the geological time as well? That gave such an insight into the connection between the living and the soil that we come from.
This sample has not been dried, so it's still wet. Still have the bottom water. Still have the water from the ocean. And then what we did, we just put it in a sort of capsule, in a bubble. So the water basically evaporated, and then it was expanding, and yeah, we were very lucky because the glass didn't break. I even don't know how to explain it, actually. I never saw this, physical processes for real. No. Encapsulating Arctic water in a glass bubble.
Right. That's what we've done there.
Sounds crazy. Yeah, it's really interesting. And I'm going to bring some of those samples back in the lab. We are going to measure those samples, so we are going to understand which is the composition of this new material which has been created today. And I'm thinking how, for example, what we have done today can be repeated for scientific purposes. Not for art, but for making scientific experiment to understand what is happening to this mineral.
We should try to understand if the minerals which we have used to prepare those glass cores have changed in composition, for example.
Oh, okay.
So that's why we should do some scanning electron microscope today.
Yeah.
Juliana's research is very interesting in exploring these life in extreme environments, which I think for us philosophically gives a really nice humbling to our own human perspective. To be able to come into contact with this kind of deep time is very interesting. If you put your arms out, the edge of your the fingertips, your nails. Yeah. That is human existence. So the planet has been around for a really long time. Species have evolved. Species have gone through multiple extinctions, multiple climate changes. For us humans, it's maybe the first. And so that's why we don't know what to do.
Being inspired by the scientists and their research, we learned that facts and compartmentalizations or categories are arbitrary because everything spills into each other. Can we get to a full picture of what the world is through science, or do we need to also take care of the relationship to it to get that image or that connection to the natural world around us?
We really like working in the intersection between arts and science because learning about, through scientific knowledge, that we share more DNA, for example, across species, we can use that as a metaphor to maybe think differently, or the fact that mushrooms have 28,000 genders. We can maybe use that then in queer politics and queer theory to again question what is this obsession with thinking binaries and dichotomies and what is natural and what is normal. So for us, we really like working with the natural sciences to use that as metaphors for us to think philosophically.
This has changed the way in which I see the geological processes that I'm observing. I was used to see them like numbers to obtain. I think now I'm more sensible to what I'm observing. I think I will be more careful also in taking my samples, because every time that we take a sample, we destroy, we damage, we touch, we take away. When I see the Arctic seafloor, I see it differently. And I don't know why, maybe this is very stupid, but I look at it with more respect. I thought that what I was observing was an expression of geological processes, but now I see as an expression of some artistic processes also. This is something that has changed, and maybe there will be other things that I see different in the future. I don't know yet. I'm happy to discover it.
Okay, so I hope that you all enjoyed watching that. I certainly enjoyed watching it again, and I really like this story between Juliana and Rhoda and Mikael, and how their different perspectives came together, and especially Juliana's reflections at the end, that it's, this process really changed the way that she sees how she's doing her sciences. So it was really interesting for me. So you can watch that video and find out more information about the project on, I think that Anna's included the link in the chat. So I will move on to the next project. Yeah, thanks, Anna. So the next project that I wanted to highlight was a project by Sonia Levy. She's a French artist based in London, and she created a artistic film called We Marry You OC, and it was co-produced with art curator Chiara Famego, TBA 21, which is an art agency in Venice, and Dr. Alberto Barros from the University of Padua. And he studies the socioeconomics of the Venice Lagoon. And the film really flipped the narrative on the Venice Lagoon looking from below, and also exposed the dynamics of the underwater life, and socio-ecological dynamics, and also historical industrialization in the lagoon. And what was really interesting about this project is that they used the film as a a research tool in multi-stakeholder workshops. There were scientists, humanities scholars, artisanal fishers, local residents, and artists all got together to discuss future management strategies for the Venice Lagoon. And they actually watched the film to help to to sort of flip the perspective to think also about the marine life as part of the socio-ecological system. So we have a short trailer for the film. The full film, we did a screening of it, but the full film was only available online for a short period, but we have the trailer available on our YouTube channel, which is only a minute, so we'll quickly watch that now. So that's just a quick little snapshot of the film, and you can find out more about this project also on our website. But I think this is a really nice example of a different way that art outputs can be used in research relevant for marine scientists and stakeholder engagement. And the third project that I wanted to highlight was a project from last year called Waves of Resonance. It was led by a Belgian artist, Elise Guillaume, and she's also a filmmaker and a sound artist. And she created a surround soundscape that was exhibited in France. And she was collaborating with environmental psychologist Dr. Marine Severin and acoustic ecologist Dr. Clea Parcerisas. They were both PhD students at the Flanders Institute of Marine Science at the time. And they used anthropogenic and biological and geophonic sounds from the North Sea and the Arctic to produce this soundscape. And what's really interesting about this project is that they use the soundscape as part of research workshops led by both Elise and Marine to look at the psychological impact of listening to the sounds. So we're going to watch a short documentary again, and you will really see here how they used the soundscape in the research workshops, and also a bit more about their collaboration. But we're actually going to we're going to skip the beginning just to save a bit of time. Okay.
Waves of Resonance is a project developed in the context of the Embracing the Ocean residency, organized by the European Marine Board. So it was a pretty incredible opportunity to go aboard the Simon Stephen with the Vliz acoustic team. I'd been recording underwater sounds for a while using, hydrophones like I did in the Arctic, but being aboard the ship and seeing them use, very scientific hydrophones like sound traps, and seeing how they are deploying and retrieving hydrophones from the North Sea and then how they are gathering the data was fascinating to me. And then I met Clea, and that's when I started to gain a better understanding of noise pollution in the North Sea and received access to some of those recordings.
And this type we would connect it like this, but otherwise sometimes we can, if we want to do a non-mono, we want to do stereo, we can have up to 4 hydrophones, and then you would have the 4 of them connected to one recorder. Noise pollution is indeed a big problem. The levels that are here in the North Sea are very high compared to the rest of the world. That's because it's an extremely busy area. It looked like less than 10% of the time there was less than 20 dBs of noise pollution, which means that in case animals want to communicate, they really have to raise their voices above the constant shipping sound that they have in the background.
So with Waves of Resonance, I really wanted to gain a better understanding of the emotional but also psychological impacts of listening to marine sounds. I thought, okay, I really need to work with someone who has a very niche research direction already in environmental psychology.
My name is Maureen Severin. I'm currently a clinical psychologist. I also recently did a PhD in environmental psychology, and that was looking at the relationship between the ocean and our mental well-being. With Elise, we constructed a type of workshop where we recruited participants to join us for a session of 1 hour or 2 hours. Participants would come in, they would fill in a questionnaire, asking questions about how they feel, what mood they were in, and also questions about their behaviors towards the ocean, so ocean-friendly behaviors, we would call that, and certain socio-demographic questions. Then they would listen to the sound piece. And right after the sound piece, they would fill in a second questionnaire with a bit the same questions about how they're feeling, what mood they're in, and also specifically what emotions they felt while listening to the sound piece. At the end of the workshop, we also gave them a list of local initiatives that they could take part in. And then 3 weeks later, we sent them an extra questionnaire and we asked them to what extent did they take part in these initiatives. And then that way we could see what impact the workshop had in terms of their behaviors and attitudes towards the ocean. The results that we have are preliminaries. We are still waiting for more data to have more concrete results. But what we see so far is that participants, after listening to the sound piece, they have a reduction in terms of the negative feelings that they may have, and they have an increase in terms of feelings of calmness, relaxation, and peacefulness. And also their stress level reduced after listening to the sound piece.
I think for me what's quite interesting with this research is actually not putting anxiety away, because I think anxiety followed by a feeling of calmness can create a strong emotional connection to the ocean. For me anyway, because when you have ups and downs and emotions, you can tend to become more personally invested to something.
Okay, so I hope you also enjoyed that video, and I think this is also a really example of very strong co-design collaboration between Elise and Clea and Marine, and the work of Elise was really influential in Marine's research. So you can also find out more information about this project on our website. And moving on, we have a whole host of other very, very successful projects as part of the repertoire so far for embracing the ocean. So these projects, you can find all the information on the website. Some of them were more strongly focused on the public outreach, such as the work of Ruwanti Gajadira. She's from Sri Lanka, and she worked with Asha DeVos and had an exhibition also at UNOC last year. We also had a dance performance at an event in Paris with youth dancers focused on mangroves, and we had a Ukrainian artist working with clay, and she had some really successful public outreach exhibitions in Ukraine looking at the impact of pollution on the Black Sea, also specifically war-related pollution and plastic. And there was, in all of these projects, there's also some impact to policymakers that have come to these events. And we also had Michael Begg, who's a sound artist who is working to sonify oceanographic data from the Arctic, and had some really successful, he made an album that's on Spotify and also some performances in Edinburgh. So very quickly, these are our projects that we have at the moment. So some things to look out for. So we have one project called Tidal Voices by Yara Costa and Miriam Beck. They're from Mozambique, and they're merging traditional knowledge. It's called I don't actually know how to pronounce it, Okolo chants from women fisher groups. And they're merging this with biodiversity data from the scientists, and they will be having an exhibition in Berlin this spring. And we also have Chichung Chang, who's from Taiwan, based in the Netherlands, and he's working with Lena Granhag, and together they're building a puzzle game to look at the role of anti-fouling paint in port modernization, shipbuilding, and marine pollution. And they have an upcoming exhibition in the Netherlands. So this is my final slide, and just to mention, we have a call out at the moment for this year's Embracing the Ocean program that will be open until the 16th of February. If you are interested to participate and looking for potential artists to collaborate with, there is a networking platform called Blue Biomatch, where the link is here on the slides. And so there you can post and say that you're interested and you're looking to collaborate, but you can also see a lot of artists have already posted there looking for collaborators. So maybe there's somebody who's looking for your expertise, and you still have time to a little bit of time, not too much time left to get your applications in. And we have one final poll.
Yeah,
that
the
hopefully
last
Anna
one.
will launch. Yeah.
Yes, so you should now see the poll coming on your window.
Yeah, I'll just read it out for you. So it's, what is your experience or interest in art science collaborations? Have you already engaged with artists, interested to engage with artists, or not interested? And all of those answers are completely reasonable.
I must say, as the moderator, I cannot answer myself, but after seeing all these projects, I would go for interested to engage with artists. It was so inspiring.
That's great to hear. Yeah, hopefully it was we provided some good examples of how these collaborations can work, and also the benefits of collaborating. Yeah, the question.
Alicia is sending in the chat, you are missing interested to engage with scientists, and she is answering as an artist.
Oh, okay. Yes,
Sorry.
sorry. I actually I was
That is
considering
great.
that the audience would be scientific. But that's great that there's also artists here. Great to hear.
And she's saying, so that would be my answer with a smiley face.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Shall I end the poll?
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
good. Wow.
Okay, so that's great. Yeah, great to see 67% are interested to engage with artists. That's great. And 25% already have engaged. That's also really great to hear. Yeah. So good news. And if we still have a bit of time left, I'm happy to take any questions there might be from the audience.
Yeah, indeed. Let's see. And if you look, there's no questions yet in the Q&A chat box, but if anybody has any, please don't hesitate. Don't be shy to send anything in the chat or in the Q&A chat box.
Otherwise, Britt, maybe we can go to the last slide just because it's got our links on it. So
Oh,
if
yeah.
anyone thinks of a question later, they can
There we go.
reach out to us.
Yeah, so this is all of our social media, and all the videos I played you can also find on our YouTube channel with a lot of other content. We also have a science webinar series, and we have also videos about the launch of our documents. And we're quite active on social media, so you can find out everything what we're up to by following us.
Yeah, and I think it was already mentioned in the chat, but we're also happy to share these slides afterwards. So if you don't catch them now, then you can figure it out afterwards.
Yeah, all those who registered, you will receive an email with all the links under the chat, the presentation, and yeah, the recording will also be published on the YouTube channel. So I think no more questions coming in. Maybe later they will think of something. But then, Paula and Britt, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to tell us about your work and all the inspiring projects. And I'm curious to see the results of the current 2 projects running. And thank you everyone for following this webinar today. And any last remarks?
Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, thanks very much for listening and for having us and for the opportunity to share our work.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone, and see you in the next webinar. I see there's still many messages coming in with thankful words. Thank you. Thanks so much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, thank you all, and have a great day.